Everything went silent at 3:17 in the afternoon. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that feels like the world itself has been unplugged. 1 second, I was gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles pale, my breath shallow from the heat pressing through the cracked window. The next, nothing. No sound of the engine, no distant traffic, no pulse in my chest. I remember thinking, very clearly, so, this is how it ends. There was no pain. That was the first thing that felt wrong. I had expected fire or pressure or at least some kind of tearing sensation, but instead it felt like stepping out of a heavy coat after carrying it for too long. A sudden lightness, a release I hadn't known I needed. Then I saw my body. It was slumped forward, forehead resting awkwardly against the steering wheel. The car had drifted slightly onto the shoulder of the road, tilted just enough to look unnatural. My hands, those same hands I had used minutes ago, were still gripping the wheel, but there was no life in them. They looked like props, like something abandoned. I didn't feel attached to it. That's what unsettled me. I should have panicked. I should have screamed, tried to return, forced myself back into that body. But instead, I hovered there, suspended in a space that didn't feel like air and didn't feel like emptiness either. It was something in between. I observed everything with a strange calm, as if I had been trained for this moment my entire life without realizing it. I saw a man running toward the car. His face was blurred, not because I couldn't see him, but because his details didn't matter anymore. He was shouting, banging on the window. I understood his urgency, but I felt no connection to it. Time didn't behave normally. Moments stretched, seconds folded into each other, and then the world began to fade. Not like darkness falling, but like reality itself losing its grip. The road dissolved first, then the car, then the man, until there was nothing left. Except me. Or at least, whatever I had become. There was a shift. Not movement in the way we understand it, but a transition. Like being pulled through a current that had no direction, only intention. I wasn't traveling forward or backward. I was being drawn inward, deeper into something that felt both foreign and familiar. At first, there was darkness, not the kind that frightens you in a room at night, but a vast, endless absence of light. Yet it didn't feel empty. It felt waiting. I became aware of a sensation, not physical but undeniable. Weight, not on my body but on my being. It pressed in from all sides, as if something was evaluating me, measuring something I couldn't see. Then, without warning, the darkness shifted. It didn't disappear. It opened. What I saw next is something I still struggle to describe even now, because every word feels insufficient. Imagine a horizon, but not horizontal. It curved upward and downward at the same time, like reality had been bent into a shape the human mind isn't designed to understand. And embedded within that impossible expanse were gates, massive, not constructed like doors or walls, but formed out of something alive. They pulsed faintly as if breathing. Their surface wasn't solid. It moved like molten iron suspended between states. The color. It wasn't just red or black. It was a spectrum of heat, of decay, of something burning without consuming itself. And as I looked at them, I knew something without being told. Those were the gates. Not metaphorical, not symbolic, real. And they were not closed. They were waiting. The moment that realization settled in, the atmosphere changed. The weight intensified. The air, if it could be called air, grew dense, almost suffocating. But again, I had no lungs, no body, and yet I felt the pressure as clearly as I had ever felt breath in my chest. Then came the sound. At first, it was distant, a low vibration, like something rumbling beneath the surface of existence itself. But it grew, slowly, relentlessly, until it wasn't just something I heard, it was something I felt. A chorus, not of voices, but of anguish, layered, overlapping, endless. It didn't come from a single direction, it came from everywhere and nowhere. It passed through me, not around me, and in that moment something inside me broke, not physically, but internally, because I understood. This wasn't a place you entered. This was a place that recognized you. The gates began to react. The surface shifted more violently now, as if something on the other side had become aware of my presence. The faint pulsing turned into a rhythm, faster, sharper. There was movement behind them, not shapes, not figures, something worse, potential, Endless, chaotic potential, like thousands of intentions without form, pressing against a boundary they desperately wanted to cross. I tried to move back. There was no back. I tried to resist. There was nothing to push against. And then, just as the fear began to take hold, real fear, the kind that strips away every illusion of control, everything stopped. The sound cut off, the pressure vanished, the gates froze, and the darkness was pierced by light. It didn't arrive gradually. It appeared, a presence, brighter than anything I had ever seen, yet it didn't hurt. It didn't blind. It revealed. The moment it entered that space, everything else lost its dominance. The gates were still there. The weight, the memory of the sound, it all lingered, but none of it held authority anymore, because this presence commanded it. I didn't see a face, not at first. What I saw was form made of light, but not shapeless. It had structure, intention, identity, and I knew. Not because someone told me, not because I had been taught, but because the knowing came from within me, as if it had always been there. This was Jesus, and yet not as I had imagined. There were no words spoken, no movement of lips, but communication happened instantly, directly, completely. Every question I didn't know I had was answered in a single exchange that didn't use language. I felt seen, not observed, not judged in the way humans judge, but understood, fully. Every decision I had made, every intention behind them, every moment I had justified, ignored, or forgotten. Nothing was hidden, and yet there was no condemnation in that initial moment, only clarity. Then the focus shifted, not to my past, but to something ahead, a moment, a time. April. The word didn't come as sound. It arrived as certainty, and with it, a weight far heavier than what I had felt before, because this wasn't about me anymore. Images followed, not like a dream, sharper, more precise. I saw crowds, not in one place, but many, people going about their lives unaware of what was approaching. There was normalcy, routine, distractions, noise, but beneath it, a fracture. Something was coming, not a single event, a shift, and it would begin in April. The message was not vague, it was not symbolic, it was direct. Humanity believes it has time, it doesn't. There was no anger in the message, but there was urgency, a seriousness that carried more weight than fear itself. I saw individuals, specific, real, standing at the edge of decisions they didn't realize mattered. Small choices, dismissed as insignificant, but connected to outcomes far beyond their understanding. I saw division intensifying, not just in nations, but within people, a pulling apart, a hardening, and then consequences, not immediate, but inevitable. The gates, those same gates behind me, were not distant. They were closer than anyone believed, not physically, but spiritually. But the presence showed me something else, a contrast. Light, not the overwhelming light of that being, but something reflected within people. Moments of kindness, of humility, of surrender, and how rare they had become. Then came the part I didn't want to accept, the responsibility. The message wasn't meant to stay with me, it was meant to be carried back, shared, not to create fear, but to awaken. The presence didn't force me, it didn't command, but it made one thing unmistakably clear. You will return. And in that moment, I felt resistance. Not because I doubted, but because I didn't want to leave. There was a peace there, even in the presence of something as terrifying as those gates, that surpassed anything I had ever known. No anxiety, no confusion, only truth. And returning meant stepping back into uncertainty, into doubt, into a world that would question everything I had seen. I tried to hold on, not physically, but internally. And for a brief moment I thought, maybe I could stay. Then the connection shifted, not harsher, but firmer. You are not finished. The meaning was absolute. There was no negotiation. And with that, everything began to collapse inward. The light receded, not fading, but withdrawing. The gates vanished. The sound, the weight, the vastness. It all folded into a single point. And then, impact, a violent return. Air slammed into my lungs like fire. Sound exploded around me, shouting, sirens, movement. Pain flooded my body all at once, overwhelming, chaotic. My eyes opened. The world was back, But nothing was the same. Days passed before I could speak about it. Weeks before I understood even a fraction of what I had been shown. And months before I could say this out loud without hesitation. What I saw was real. What I was told was not optional. April is not just another month. It is a threshold. And the question that has stayed with me since that moment is not what will happen. It is this: when that moment comes, will you recognize it